Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Biggest fight in the industry. Okay, that's a little bit too far. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is the biggest fight in the heavyweight class. Does that sound better? Could you go with that? And it's your choice, by the way. It's not mine. But do you believe that Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is a bigger fight? Then I'll just give you an example. Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. Conor McGregor versus whoever he fights next. Is it somewhere in there? Somewhere in that top three? And it'd be very weird if it was. I mean, it would be very strange if it was, considering it's not the fight that we made. It would be very strange. Jon is talking about showing a sincerity. And when Jon talks about showing a sincerity, I interpret that, and I admit, possibly falsely, but I interpret that as saying, I regret my decision. You had offered me Tom. I was wrong to relinquish my title and not fight Tom. If I could go back in time, I would not have done that. That's what I interpret, but that's not actually been said. We've gotten close. The exact words used were, I want to fight on the White House lawn for the World Championship. If that's still Tom, then it's Tom. And I will show you that I'm serious. All right. Because I've had to stop talking about Tom versus Jon. I couldn't make any money doing it. I couldn't get you guys to click on it anymore. Sponsors call in, they pick, they get something called thumbnails. They see my thumbnails. They fall right into order. They quit picking them. In fact, I had a gambling site tell me specifically, we do not want on that one. We do not have odds, and we do not believe we're ever going to have odds because we don't believe that we're going to get that fight. Fine, fair enough. I'm just sharing with you. I've walked away from it. Now, I started 2 minutes and 2 seconds ago asking you guys if Jon versus Tom is the biggest fight that we can make. I have the numbers. I have my numbers where you have answered that question and you have made it very clear you're not interested in that fight. Now, I hypothesize that you say that because you're smart. You smelled a rat from the beginning and you didn't want to get excited for something that you knew you weren't going to get delivered. That's what I believe, because I think that fight still works. Now, things change very quickly. And just to remind you, before we got to Jon and Tom, and this is the savior of the heavyweight class. This is the one that's going to move the company in a whole new direction. Before we had that exact same narrative, just remove Tom and insert Sergey Pavlich. Sergey is the one Jon won't fight. Sergey is the one Jon will retire before having to face. Sergey is the true power. Sergey is the one to save the company, break the records, and move the industry in a whole new direction. And that was only for about 3 months, because before that, you guys were saying, Jones versus Francis. That's the one. That's the one to move the needle. That's the one to break the ceiling. That's the one to move the sport and the industry into a whole new direction. And I don't fault you for any of that. I shared in your excitement with each and every one of those. I just think if we look back at that timeline, we've done a very good job of proving to ourselves that we change our mind, right? It's one of the many talents that we have over here at Bad Guy Inc. We change our mind. And I don't believe, and I strongly don't believe Alex Pereira ever fights at 205 pounds again after Ankalaev. They're not building in that direction. Pereira is not building towards an opponent. There is no opponent looking at the chessboard and seeing, all right, if I want a title fight, I got to go after this guy, and starting to poke his head up and starting to get something going with Alex. And I don't think it's just because everybody is dismissing Alex's chances with Ankalaev. I think we all get how great Ankalaev is and how great Alex is. We just understand that absent of Ankalaev, Pereira has completely cleared out the division. In fact, it is very clearly that the guy that should be fighting for the title next is named Prohaska, and Prohaska has fought Alex not once but twice already. And to get to a trilogy fight when the first two were not competitive, were not close, and were not controversial is a very rare thing to do. Meanwhile, Alex at heavyweight is fascinating. Jon Jones at heavyweight isn't. Jon Jones's biggest threat, just skill for skill and move for move, is Curtis Blaydes. And you guys are not dying to see that fight. Jon Jones's most fun, the fight where we could have the most fun, because we already know the outcome. That's not his fault. He just got so good. We already know the outcome. So how are we going to have a good time? Well, the one where we'd have the most fun, press conference and the face-off, and what difference does it make anyway, is Derek Lewis. And I don't think that I can sell you on the idea that Jon's going to be competing with Derek Lewis or that Jon is going to be competing with Curtis Blaydes. I don't think I can do that. So if we're already admitting that the top two aren't going to be there, it would seem that there's one fight for Jon, and that is Tom. But that landscape changes in the blink of an eye if Alex Pereira becomes a heavyweight. If you get confronted with the question, would you rather see Pereira take on Aspinall? Or would you rather see Jon Jones take on Aspinall? You wouldn't be wrong, and I won't argue with you. I'm just sharing that you were defiant 2 years ago and you were not going to budge. It was Jones versus Francis. And then you woke up one morning and you were not going to be talked off this. You were an expert. You were a master analyst. You're a fan, and you're going to get what you want, which is Jon Jones versus Sergey Pavlich. And then you woke up one morning and you were indignant to the idea that the integrity of a division hinges on Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And then you lost interest completely in all of them. You don't want to see Jon versus Francis, and you don't talk about Jon versus Pavlich. In fact, you would raise your hand in objection to that if you had Jon's services. You were never interested in Volkov. You don't want to go have a bunch of fun with Derek Lewis, though you would tune in. You don't even agree with me that Curtis Blaydes stylistically is the best for him, but none of those things are true if we're talking about Alex. You would like to see Alex against Derek Lewis. You would like to see Alex against Curtis Blaydes. You would like to see Alex versus Tom Aspinall. You would like to see Alex versus Cyril Gane. You would like to see Alex versus Volkov. I'm just telling you, the idea that Jon is clinging to, that I'm going to show a sincerity so that I can get that fight, has a clock that's ticking, and it's a mythical clock and it's a mythical tick. But I just gave for you in 2 years the changing of the seats 4 times. 4 times. You were insistent it's got to be this guy until you move to the next. But you're not going to move again until you did. And I don't know if it comes to the White House lawn. I don't know if bringing a guy back that was retired for 8 days and has made it pretty clear he doesn't want to be here anyway. I don't know if that would trump somebody like Alex Pereira. Pereira could be coming off of a loss. He could still walk right into a heavyweight title fight. Probably won't. Knowing Pereira, if he was to lose to Ankalaev, he'll probably go right to heavyweight and get a win. Now, you're really going to want to see him versus Alex, but let's say that Pereira doesn't get beat. Let's say that Pereira beats Ankalaev, and now you've got a champion versus champion situation. And I know we're not seeing a lot of champ-champ. In fact, we're seeing just the opposite. If you want to change divisions, give us your belt back. I understand those things. But my point of giving you a shiny trinket that you're going to see and you're going to want to grab and you're going to want to play with, I think it changes very quickly. And I think that the storylines and the floodgates are going to open, regardless of outcome, after Alex Pereira does his rematch with Ankalaev.